maybe she was on the phone. She called me her boyfriend, and I was like, "Whoa, like, are we?"
Like,
And
oh,
I was like, "Are we using that term? Like, is this really happening?" Because I struck out once. So I was like, "I'm not jumping back into this unless I know." So that was a big thing to me. And so when I told her that, I think she originally was like, "Okay, well, I need time to figure out me as well, and what I want." And I was like, "Okay." And then I didn't hear from her for about 7 days, and I
I
was like,
love her, by the way. Can we just talk
I was
about
like,
how she just is just
"You still thinking?"
I love her. I love her. Okay.
Look, she
Love
put me
her.
on ice, and I was like, after day three, I was like, "Are you still busy? Are you still thinking?" Because
I want to be your
You want to know,
boyfriend. I
like,
do want to
what's
be your
going on?
I
boyfriend
mean,
now.
I was like, "Hold
Hey,
on,
it's
wait,
boyfriend
wait."
here.
Soundtrack's at it again.
Hello and welcome to the Bold Black Girls Podcast. I'm Aries.
And I'm Kim.
And today, now we told y'all we were going to be having some men on the podcast this month, kind of in honor of Father's Day and just kind of supporting our male, yes, supporting our male allies that we definitely need as we are, fighting the good fight of faith and all that good stuff, right? So today we have Benjamin Vann. He is the founder and CEO of Impact Ventures. Welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Yes, welcome.
What's up? I'm excited to be back.
I
This is my
know.
second
See,
time
I had been
being
on my Scratching and
Yeah.
Surviving
Right.
podcast.
Oh, right,
Yes,
right.
and this
Okay,
is
okay.
yeah. So this is still, me and Ben. Now, look, I
Second
told
time.
him I said we could talk for days because he has
Oh,
a
wealth
plethora of knowledge,
Yes.
and he loves to share. So we're really happy to have you. So just give a brief intro of who you are, and then we'll just hop right into the questions because we got a lot to talk about today.
Yes, yes. So I'm excited to join us. So happy pre-Father's Day to all the fellas out there that are holding it down. So I'm excited to be here and chat with you all on something other than business. But I know we're gonna touch on that a little bit. But love talking about Black love, legacy, fatherhood, and all that stuff in light of the holiday that's coming up. So. As Aries mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Impact Ventures. We are a nonprofit organization based in Dallas, Texas, that is focused on closing the racial wealth gap for women and people of color, specifically through entrepreneurship and access to capital. And so we offer training programs, we offer consulting, we offer really opportunities for people to come and grow their business when traditionally they don't have access to some types of capital, whether it be venture capital, whether it be small business loans. We try to remove the barriers for people to get access to that. So more on that, but that's what I do. And I love to help my community. I believe in generational wealth and how we can all succeed together. So glad to be
I
here.
love that.
And he's a Kappa, y'all. So whatever y'all think about that. Oh yes.
That's always at the end
So
of the bio.
exactly, put that at the end. But
Right, but at the end.
we've been watching your journey for some years now, and it's been really cool. You just had a baby who, how old did he just turn? 3 months?
3 months. Yes.
Oh,
Wow.
Long.
I'm like, that 3 months went by fast.
And he is absolutely adorable.
Yeah.
3 months going on 30.
I know, right? Because he is,
Going on
oh my
30.
God, he's so cute. So talk to us, because we just had an episode last week where we talked about, kind of this battle between the Black man and the Black woman. Mostly that's being fought out on social media,
Yeah.
Clubhouse, all these
TikTok,
places.
Yeah.
Yeah, YouTube and all this stuff. And so we're really all about, the community and kind of bringing us back together, because we can't do anything that we need to do without each other. And so,
Right.
you have your queen, and, we've been out here trying to be like, okay, Kim said she's looking for you
Where
to
they
say,
at? Where they
where
at?
your uncle's at, you know?
Where your single uncles
Yes,
at? Because
of
you know,
course.
Where your senior uncles?
yeah, I'm specific. Single. The ones is probably
Specific.
like showing up to the games, no kids, like
Okay,
spectating.
all right.
Talk to us about the journey, you and your
Obvious.
lady, how y'all met, and kind of how you got where you are today, because y'all had a milestone yesterday. So talk us through all that.
Well, I will first preface this by saying there is a unfair advantage to us men in the dating game right now, specifically black men, and I will say that because I will say the majority of our black male population, unfortunately, is incarcerated. Unfortunately, through prison to pipeline, inequities in our community where we are historically disproportionately targeted. And because of that, I believe black women outnumber black men 3 to 1. It might even be 4 to 1. So, so ladies, know that when you're going into the game, is that there's a small pool, right, of black men, and when we talk about black love and the importance of our community sticking together. So, just knowing that the dating game has to be intentional and creative and patient, right? And so I would say leading up to my fiance and I meeting each other, we both were like, everyone gets caught in that situationship where they're like, I don't know if this is going somewhere, but like I'm doing it just to pass the time. Like it's literally that, like that analogy when God is trying to give you something greater and you're holding on to something that
Come on,
is, you
somebody,
don't
come
even
on,
know he's about to bless you
come
like
on, come on.
tenfold, right?
Right.
And so you within those situations where like if you're going to date, in order to really find that person, you have to be free. You have to not, and I say free as in like emotionally, physically. We talk about soul ties. Like you
Mm.
can't just monkey bar from person to person,
Mm.
right? You literally have to stop and focus on what you want, as an individual in the dating game. So going into it knowing like, what do I want to get? What do I really want? What am I looking for? A lot of times people just, date without a goal in mind, or the goals are very superficial, right? And so I'll say, coming into this, when we met each other, it was like, I was like, okay, in order to meet my wife, I have to be the husband. Like I have to be the person in
On
order to meet
somebody.
the
Tell them.
person, right? And so I think a lot of times we try to like, date around, and nothing's wrong with dating, but because I feel like there are stages. There's dating, there's courting. If you believe in that old school traditional, I do. I think there's courting. I think there's dating. You could date multiple people, but I think once you start courting someone, that's a very intentional process. In order for you to find that match, you can't be stuck in situations that are good for you and people that aren't good for you. And so it took a lot of like getting rid of that, to really focus on like, okay, who do I want? What type of woman is the right fit and mold for me? And so we actually met on social media. So when I talk about that, like being creative and strategic, and
Which
knowing that
which
the
app? Which
Which
digital,
app?
app? Hold on, let me go get my
it was
phone
on
right now.
Facebook actually. Well, it was a combination of Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so when we met, it was I had noticed right off the bat her energy. And one thing I know that I'm a person that has a strong kind of zest for life. I'm a risk taker. I don't know if it's because I'm an
He's
Aries
an
or
Aries,
what,
y'all.
but
Yes, I was about to say he's
yeah,
an Aries, y'all. So
I'm a very like, let's do it. Like let's jump out and let's do it. And so I love a mate who can match my energy and their zest for life. They don't have to be passionate about the same things I'm passionate about, but as long as they're passionate and they have that zest for something. And I immediately noticed that, about her. And then I thought about, me as an individual and all the different facets of my life, from professional to fraternity to personal, to like all these different elements. And I said, well, they have to be enough of a dynamic woman that they can fit in all the phases of my life. Because sometimes I'm talking to people in the hood, and we talk about starting, and sometimes I'm in the board meetings, and sometimes I'm at the fancy galas. And so they have to be able to fit in all those worlds, that I exist in. And that was a big thing. And then as we kind of got to know each other, that first 3 to 9 months is always that shaky, where you're trying to like, you take your emotional baggage and you take your experiences and try to put them on that person to change them and mold them. And then you get to that moment where you just stop and say, look, this is who this person is, right? I either have to accept that, and I'm a big believer in the 80-20 rule. And so the 20% that I was like, oh no, I really felt like, okay, I can live with that 20%. That
Yeah.
20% is great,
Doable.
but the 80% was amazing. And so it took a while for us to actually go on our first date because
Who reached
I
out
had a lot
first?
of stuff
Yeah.
going
Who
on.
reached out first?
It was me. It was me. As a man should, be the first to engage. I believe. I reached out and I had noticed because she was at the time she was on this journey, and I believe that both of us were on the journey at the same time, and it was about personal development and like fulfillment of life. And so she had literally given up all her personal like belongings and said, I'm going to travel the world, 30 cities. I think she called it Cash Goes 30 for 30 30 cities around the world. And she was in the middle of her tour. She was going to Africa, to Kenya, to Italy and Spain, and like she was going all over the country, right? And so I noticed that I was like, okay, she's on the move. Let me see what she's about. And so I was kind of going through that journey as well, starting Impact Ventures. I was kind of on this like, okay, I'm building something from the ground up. It's taking literally all of my energy. I don't have time today. I don't have the money today. Like, like if I'm gonna spend my time, it needs to be very strategic and intentional. And I remember that it was a few. She thought I was trying to stand her up because I said, "Let's get coffee," or like she thought I was kind of playing, because I'm the type. I'm like, look, let me. If I can hold a conversation with you over coffee, then we can go to dinner. Then
I
we
like that.
progress. Like I'm
No,
very
and
old
you don't
school.
commit to the full date
Exactly.
if you don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I'm like, okay, let's do coffee first. This nice little coffee shops. Maybe get a little muffin or pastry or something like that. Right, because at that time it should be more about the conversation than it should be about the where we go and the ambiance and who's there. And
Yeah.
when you're on a date, then you worry about those things. But if I can't even have a conversation on the
It's no problem.
intellectual,
Yeah.
spiritual, emotional kind of that
Come
level,
on, you better preach. Go ahead.
I know I can't go deeper than that.
All right.
So
I
it
love it.
started a very slow process. It was about 8 months of us kind of just, talking in and out on Facebook, until we finally went on our first date. And when I went on the first date, I knew she was going to be my wife. So
Ooh, now,
when she walked
ladies,
up, I
hold
knew
on,
I
hold
knew
on.
she was going to be
Pause,
my wife.
pause, pause, pause,
Pause.
pause.
Slow and steady wins the race. Number
Listen,
one.
okay? Did you hear what this man said? On the first date, he knew that she was going to be his wife. Now, listen, we've been doing recap episodes of Ready to Love season 4.
Oh,
And, this is
Superficial.
it's just you learn so much through these conversations, and this is why I like to talk to men about their experience in the dating world, because
mhm.
women, we will create a reality of our own that is just not real. We're like, well, he got this going on
Fictional.
and this going. No,
Fictional.
they know, y'all. They will know. It does not take a long time for them to know. Now, they may not tell you that in the beginning, but they know whether or not they're like, I already know what category this girl's going to be in. I'm either trying to smash or I'm trying to make this a long
Dash.
term, smash or dash. Yeah, smash and dash. So yeah, I like that you acknowledge that you recognized it early on, because I'm gonna tell you, we'll be out here acting like 5 years later, talking about he not short. Listen, come on now. So how long did you all date before you proposed? I feel like it was it
Oh,
wasn't that long.
I feel like it was
we
like
did. We actually we were dating. I want to say, and I wish she was in here because she can fact check because y'all remember everything.
Exactly.
Y'all remember dates
we
and
do.
y'all remember
We
everything.
probably have it in our notes.
Um, I will probably say before we even announced it. So we were talking about maybe 5 or 6 months before we went on the first date. So it was almost like I knew her before the first date. You know how you
Okay.
get the first date and then you get to know someone? It
Yeah.
was like we were talking because she was traveling. So she was in and out of the country. And so we were doing a lot of talking, FaceTiming, stuff like that before we actually went on our first date. And so I think we announced to the world that we were dating. I want to say it was maybe 9 or 10 months. Like we were dating kind of behind the scenes because we wanted to make sure that like, okay, let's us two get this thing together before we bring the world
Go
into
public.
what we're building. Yeah, into the world. And usually you would tell the world when you meet someone that you're excited
I
about.
ain't
And
telling
then
nobody.
Not either.
But
right.
but here's one thing I got. I got a nugget. I got another nugget, y'all. She was doing her thing.
She
She
was
was
doing her
minding her
thing.
business and
Hmm.
not thinking about getting no man at that time. She was
Right.
handling her business, accomplishing
Doing
her
her.
goals, doing her personal development work, which we're very big on the
She
podcast.
was writing and
And then,
yep.
while she's out here doing that, it attracted that energy that somebody said, "Hey, like
Mm,
I
I
like what she's
want to see what
doing.
she got going on out here." So I love that. That's really cool.
yes. As they
Now,
say, a man findeth, right?
come on! Oh my god. Okay.
Are you hold on? Are you discipling anybody? Are you discipling anybody? And how old are they and where do they live? Where do they reside?
For a small fee. No.
That's funny. No, so fast forward, y'all. Everything is going great, and you decide that you're gonna propose. Now, didn't that happen last
Yes,
year? Did that happen last year?
That was
it
last. It was
happened
during the
last
pandemic.
year.
It was
Yep, it
during the
was during
pandemic.
the pandemic. What
Yeah.
was crazy was that we were dating, I want to say for maybe a year. It might have been a year and a half. And I had reached out to her parents to ask them for her hand in marriage. Like I FaceTime her parents, her mom
Is
and
she from
dad,
the
and
Bay,
asked
right?
them. Yes, she
Yeah. I know.
is.
See,
Yep,
all of
she's
this
from
just
Oakland.
is just
I
perfect.
love it.
Okay.
And so we, at that time, I was renting a house in South Dallas, and it was literally like she came back from her Kenya trip and stayed with me for like a weekend, and then that weekend turned into like she never went back home. Like, so
Oh, y'all
it
was
was like we just
shacking.
hit it off. Yeah, we just hit it off. It was like, okay, this is cool. Like we went through, I would say we went through what a lot of seasoned couples like in a short time they
Hmm.
went through in 10, 20, 30 years. So there was a lot of sides of her that I could see that, okay, how would she handle this situation in various aspects, when it comes to money. Like I had never been in such an open relationship that talked about money where we laid it on the table. Here's my debt, here's your debt. Like how can we, like we in the
Hmm.
dating process, we were in the courting
Very
process, we were talking
transparent.
about those things,
You gotta
right?
do
And
that though.
so
You gotta do that so
you
that you can
do.
see what does the future really look like. Is this just, because you gotta take it from the lustful part to,
That's
Yep.
reality
are
of where
we
we
really
started.
compatible? Do we really
Yes.
have what it takes to be successful? Because finances, is a really big issue, in relationships.
Yep.
And I think, what's your credit score? What kind of debt you got? Those are very good conversations to have early on. So you understand how they handle things and what, even
And
not
How
that
you
they
truth
got to
handle
be
handle
money.
it,
told,
and not that they got to handle it perfect, but it's just
right.
that, like, okay, are you willing to, if I'm better at it, allow me
Flexible,
to,
right.
you know,
Yep. And keep in mind, these are all things I didn't do in the first time I tried to get married. Like it didn't work out. I was like, man, I should have asked this,
mhm.
all those questions I just skipped over. I was in a rush. And and because of that, it really allowed me to embrace who she was and who I was and what we were both becoming. Right. Like I've
Yeah,
always wanted someone I could build with, not the situation where it's like, okay, they come ready made. And I think
right.
sometimes we want that ready made person,
Yep. Mhm.
not understanding that, like, okay, we have a lot of development to do in our own selves, let alone we put this expectation on other people to be fully baked into who they are. So I love the fact that when we did come together, it was like we both came to this situation at ground zero, saying, like, okay, what do you have? What do I have? And nothing was material. It was all about character, values, work ethic, intellect, you know what I mean? Our family history, all those things allowed us to build what we have today together. Nobody can, none of, no, neither one of us can say, I came into it with this and you came off of me. And, like it was literally, we
Love it.
built it, together. And that was difficult. There was one time where I got cold feet and because I was like, is this too good to be true? I was like, let me make sure. So I was like, okay, let me think for a second. Cause I think it was, we were driving a car and I think maybe she was on the phone. She called me her boyfriend and I was like, whoa, like are we
Like,
and
oh,
I was like, are we using that term? Like, is this really happening? Because I struck out once. So I was like, I'm not jumping back into this unless I know. So that was a big thing to me. And so when I told her that, I think she originally was like, okay, well, I need time to figure out me as well, and what I want. And I was like, okay. And then I didn't hear from her for about 7 days. And I
I
was like,
love her, by the way. Can we just talk
I was
about
like,
how she just is just
you still thinking?
I love her. I love her. Okay.
Look, she
Love
put me
her.
on ice. And I was like, after day 3, I was like, are you still busy? Are you still thinking? Because,
I want to be your
I wanna know,
boyfriend. I
like,
do want to
what's
be your
going on?
I
boyfriend
mean,
now.
I was like, hold
Hey,
on,
it's
wait.
boyfriend here.
So I think it was about maybe a week and a half, and then we came back and was like, okay, this is what we really want to do, and then we progressed forward. But I think you have to take that additional step and evaluate: am I getting caught up in the emotion? Am I getting caught up of the feeling, or is this something that's real? What are the facts here? Like, what are the true traits of this person? What have they historically shown you? Are they about their word? And that was consistent, and so that's what I went back on and say, you know what? Okay, this is a good thing that I want to pursue. And from there, it blossomed so fast. We ended up having this plan that, okay, it was like, all right, we're gonna move to Uptown. We're gonna live the yuppie life and walk to restaurants and shows and kind of do all that. And then I think it was like the second or third day that we moved in, we found out that we was having a baby. And so we were like, and
Benjamin
we
was
thought
like,
we were gonna
enough.
be living the life. And
Yeah.
then we start, okay, now we got a baby plan. We gotta get like strollers and cribs and
Right.
figure out where all the
A little bit more
names, and we were like,
suburban.
wait a minute, we were supposed to be, yeah. So I'm like, we're supposed to be kicking it, going to day parties together and doing
Okay.
all that. And now we were like, oh, okay. So, but I would say it for us both at this stage of our lives in our 30s, we were so
Ready.
ready, yeah, ready and really excited to do this at this age, because I think a lot of time, I think the typical age is like in your 20s when you have kids, because everybody's on this timeline and like, I want to have
Right.
kids before I'm 30 because my eggs going, and all that stuff.
Yeah. And you don't even know who you
But
are. You don't
you don't
know
even
who
know
you
who you
are
are.
Understand.
at
You
all. 30s
don't.
are a good age, I think, because that's kind of when you start turning the corner. You have some vision for where you want to go. You kind of know what you like. You've been in a few relationships. You say, like, yeah, okay, I can be better,
Yeah. That's
and
why it
I
doesn't
can
take
find better.
long.
Yeah.
If you are 35, and I'll use this with an asterisk, the name, the age. If you are at least 35, or at least in your 30s, let's just say that, and you still don't know what you want in a mate, that means you don't know who you are,
Mhm.
right? And that's why it doesn't take that long at this age, because you should have done
No,
the
you done
self
the work.
work. You
Yes.
should have done the self work to know exactly who you are, what your do's and don'ts are, what your deal breakers are, right? In a situation where you can tell in 5 minutes if a
Immediately.
person is, and so that's how I knew.
This
Yep.
is from a man. This is from a man. This is not a woman talking. Everybody listen. Because I feel like women, we talk about this stuff all the time. We're like, you need to know who you are. He need to have a vision and blah, 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 blah. We'll go up, do all that. But to hear a man really saying these things, I think like it just solidifies that this is fact.
But let me point out, he's a specific type of man that he has done the work as well.
That's key.
So
That's true.
you
That's
have
true.
done the work, Benjamin, and you even said, I love. You said what we brought to the table. We didn't talk about possessions. We talked about
Right.
character. And I think a lot of times we are missing the character and the consistency. We talked about the 3 C's last week.
Yes.
So
Look, there is, and don't get me wrong. Historically, our culture has been handed the worst hand. I don't even want to say a bad hand, but the worst hand. And unfortunately, there has been an attack on the family structure, the nucleus of a family, and because of that, individuals are walking around with deficits, and they don't even know it, right? And the thing is not to shine the light on the deficit, but to shine the light on the fact that people don't know or have the resources on where to go to mitigate those deficits, right? It's about being aware. Like,
Yes.
you could be dealt the bad cards, but it's about what you do with those cards, right? How many
whew,
people have we seen been born into certain situations, but because they didn't allow that to be their story or their narrative or their future, they've literally changed their lives. And so I think that's the component around why these conversations are great, because somebody listening into this that doesn't have the resources is going to say, oh, I should start looking into, like, okay, counseling, okay, or like
right.
having conversations as an adult with my parents as an adult, right? that's a different type of conversation when you try to understand the history and why things are the way they are. That helps you heal as an adult, right? And
And
so I think it's
that parent piece is very key.
And that healing piece.
Because those can be
yes.
very difficult depending upon the type of relationships you have with your parents. I mean, I was always very blunt and to the point with my parents. Like I just kind of, I was raised that way. My mom is very raw. Like she don't, we don't hold no punches. So we would have very difficult conversations frequently, but it took my mom evolving herself and going through her own personal work, like which I never thought would ever happen because I'm like, she ain't never gonna change. She
Right.
and as now she's about to turn 64. She just turned 64, I think. And she in the last 10, 12 years, like I've seen her actually evolve, but a lot of it came from me kind of challenging her and our old way of doing things and her seeing like, hey, this actually is working better. The way that Aries is doing it, how she's raising her kids, how these things are, and I think taking that courage to talk to your parents about their journeys, it helps you understand. Even with my dad, like he is so stubborn and not like wanting to change. But when I learned who he was as a man, not my father, as a man, it really gave me a window into who I am. I'm like, oh, I got that from you. Like, I never would have known this about you if we had not talked. Like, okay, so I need to really work on that because that could be a barrier to me, or this is a plus, right? So, like, now you have a newborn. And so your vision is going to, obviously is starting to shift a little bit more now that you have a life, that is dependent on you to be the leader and the head and to set the vision for what's going to happen with him and your family. So tell us a little bit about how you have shifted your mindset and how that has you looking at your dad and your family, as well as now, with the new baby.
Yeah, I mean, back to the parenthood piece. That's such a big focal point of the answer to your question, because a lot of times parents, there's a difference between like, parenting is an active word, right? It is not a passive word. And sometimes because of the circumstances, the cards that, our parents are dealt with, I like to say that they did the best they could for what they had. And a lot of our parents are like that. And I know as adults, being younger, we resent our parents. We don't understand why. Well, why couldn't y'all do this for me? And we don't even understand or fathom the situations that they were in or the predicaments that they were put in. And so, for me personally, the journey was like I spent, and my parents probably don't even know this to this day, but a lot of my formative years, which is like high school, I spent a lot of time with other people's families than I did with my own family. And that was part of the reason because my family were in ministry, right? And so naturally in ministry, you're always there for other people's families. You're going to other people's, you're praying for other people. You go see so-and-so in the hospital, so-and-so sick, so-and-so got the lights cut off. You got to help them with the bill. Like it's always about other people. And a lot of times PK preacher kids don't realize the sacrifice that the families of preachers and ministers make in a way that it's not a form of neglect. It can be in some instances, but they're not there all the time, right? Like you're so busy with church stuff and other people's lives that you forget. I need to be there for my own family. I need to be there and talk to my own son, about what's going on at school. And so you think at the time, like, okay, we're putting him through private school. He's excelling at sports, and you think your kid is okay. And they're doing great because they're excelling in sports. They got friends, they're in a new school, but inside that kid is kicking and screaming, saying like, I just want y'all to talk to me or to listen to me or know what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that component of like what I want to change, is really like being an active parent throughout the whole process, not even just now. I mean, I think in the Black community, we have this, I don't know, this myth that we told each other that when you're 18, you're grown.
Oh my God.
When you're 18 years old, you do not know, you're still a kid. And we got this when you get 18. You gone. You out my
And let's be
house. You
real, some
18.
21-year-olds are still babies.
Yes. 45-year-olds I know are still
Listen,
look.
not going there.
Ooh, that's
and
another
so
podcast.
and so when I think about like how my mind shift has changed, obviously our generation, we've been exposed to a lot more than our parents' generation. So I truly believe our generation is going to be the one to kind of break those chains, those generational curses,
Yeah.
um, generational wealth, like passed down of knowledge and information. Like I feel like our generation is that one that's going to literally shift, how it looks going forward because we were able to process both like practical and like intellect, but then also emotional,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the evolution of like manhood and like what it means to be a man back in the day is like, I provide, I protect,
Yep. That's
and that's it. And
And
it's
then
like, but what
and
about
now
right.
y'all
What about
figure
the
all the rest
emotional
out.
well-being of the child?
y'all women folks
Handle
figure out
all that.
everything
Exactly.
else.
Yeah.
And I love my fiance because she challenges me to go beyond that protection and that provider to be, that provision over the vision for our family. And that really takes an emotional connection. So when you talk about like what is the vision or how my mindset changed, obviously it's more, legacy mindset, but it's also being a leader or being a role model that my actions and my words align, right? And I think a lot of times growing up, we seen the concept of manhood and it was like, or even just parenthood. And I think this is just the thing in the Black community is do as I say, not as I do,
Yeah.
right? And then when the kids ask why, because I said so,
Mm-hmm.
that is you have to remember you're training a young adult. You are building a young adult. They might be kids now, but when you train a kid to accept because I said so, you are training them to walk out in a world that never challenges, never pushes, never questions their own abilities or their own trajectory, and because I said so. That mindset is an acceptance mindset that I feel like has been ingrained in us to where we don't. Why should we not explain things to kids, right?
And you're not
And even if
you're not
Exactly.
teaching.
right,
You are saying we talked about this when we talked about like negotiation. Well, you just be happy you got a job. They offer you 100,000. Be like, okay, I'm glad I got my little 100,000. Well, what if you was like, no, I want more.
right, I
Like, well,
need
I deserve
170.
more. So I shouldn't be have
Right.
to accept just what's given to me. And you are also not preventing the same thing from happening, right? So you're saying, okay, this is what you do: go get a job at the post office and
Mhm.
retire and be done, and I
wait on
think,
your pension and all that.
yeah, and
I call it
now
Right.
we're not in that. Like I talked to my 9-year-old. We were on the drive to baseball camp the other day, and we're talking about investing in real estate and what
Mhm.
profit margins are, and all these different things that
Yeah.
what I'm learning. What we're learning, we should be giving to our children as well, so that they could be better. We want them to be
Mhm.
better,
And
not do
being
the
better is
same thing.
okay. Being
Yeah.
better is
that is
okay.
another
That's why
problem
you
that we
do
Yes.
have in
it.
our community.
That's why you
Like,
do it for them to
Yes.
go farther, for them to
Yes.
do more than what you did in your life, and understanding that you were the seed that was planted,
the
in
foundation.
that
Yes.
right. This fruit came from a certain tree, right? Not you can't the fruit doesn't compete with the tree that it came from.
Right.
That doesn't even make sense, right? And so, um, yeah, now that I mean, it's one of those things where I'm very hyper aware now
Mhm.
of every action that I take. When of course he's 3 months, so he doesn't recognize and understand and remember everything. But I'm very conscious of like what I'm doing, what I'm building, um, what I want to teach him as he gets older, and how he sees me treat his mom.
Mhm.
All those things that come into play. I grew up in a home of domestic violence. To where I kind of vowed literally like a blood oath to myself that I would never put my
Yeah.
hands, on a woman, because that was just when you see that, when you have those, nightmares of, just the stuff that you experienced as a child. That stuff, it when you don't do the self work, it comes out in
It will
in
stay
one
with you
element.
your whole,
It does.
whether you think, because I'm the same way. I grew up in a household with that as well. Whether you made that vow or not, if you do
Mhm.
not do the work, you will exhibit that behavior
It
out.
will.
It'll come out in some form.
And it's same with me. Like I had to really learn how to control my temper, and things like that, and not come out all like the first thing you want to do is hit somebody, or whatever, because it really gets into your mind. So I appreciate that you've, really done that self work to be aware of these things. Cause I think, obviously as adults, we want to be doing that just because, but you have when you have children, we have to be that much more so that more child is not, we're not giving that same stuff to our kids,
Yeah.
And you mentioned something, about legacy and things like that. And I know we'll kind of, let's shift a little bit into kind of what you've been building, over these last years, because that's something that definitely will be legacy, to your son. You come from a family of entrepreneurs. So talk to us about like how this sparked, how you ended up getting ready to start Impact Ventures, and how did what you learned from family kind of influence that?
Yeah, I mean, so both of us, so my fiance and I, we both come from a family of entrepreneurs. And so I love that idea as well, because when you've seen it, you get it, right? You get the hustle, you get the grind, you get sacrifice, like you get, hey, things may not, there's a lot of traits that you learn in entrepreneurship that have nothing to do with business, right? And so having that partner that understands like what it's like to date and to be with an entrepreneur is so important to, the dating process, the choosing your mate. If you're going to date an entrepreneur, you need to know what does that mean. If I'm dating an entrepreneur, right? That means they might not be readily available whenever you want. That means, money might be up and down, from month to month, from year to year. There's going to be high times and low times, and you have to be able to support them emotionally, to where at least emotionally we're here, regardless of the money, regardless of if we're popping or not, at least we know we here on this steady ground. So, I think watching that growing up was a powerful thing for me, because it showed independence. It showed freedom in a whole nother way. To be economically free is a totally different, it's a totally different aspect. People push voting, and I love that we're doing voting. Trust me, I was a huge advocate of voting. I mean, I led an initiative in 2015 that registered like 10,000 people to vote. And I said, what good is a voter if they don't have a job or a business or a means economically to put food on their table, right? And so, and I think Dr. King, even as at the tail end of his death, he started to realize that the social activists or the social justice movement was nothing without the economic justice movement. And when they started to shift from social justice and voting rights, that was the first phase of his work. The second phase of his work was the poor people's movement, right? He was fighting for economic justice. That's when things started to, hey, we'll let y'all vote, but when you start owning land,
y'all trying to get some money,
but nah, we can't. Nah, y'all, y'all can go vote, but like we this here neighborhood. And so, seeing that in my journey of entrepreneurship was definitely a personal thing with breaking generational curses. And even there was a time where they didn't quite understand like what I was building or why I was building, not understanding that they were the ones that planted the seed of why I wanted to be independent, why I didn't want to go back to corporate America, right? And so what I did was like most entrepreneurs do, take the series of learning, exposure from previous jobs and industries. Everywhere I worked, I always had to deal with something money. I'm always the money person. Whenever I'm involved in something, they're like, you gonna manage the money, and you gonna I'm always the money person. So everything I've ever been involved in has been associated with capital in some shape or form. And so seeing that on every aspect of those experiences, the people that were receiving the capital didn't look like me, and the people that were writing the checks didn't look like me. And that's when the question of why is that started to probe in me and kind of grow stronger over the time as I started to have more success and more success. And I say success in the terms of like really manifesting a vision. When I started, it was like we didn't have nothing, and we was in a 1,300, probably less than that, 1,100 square foot space in South Dallas. where people are like, what is this guy doing? I mean, I was putting up lamps and putting in floors and putting in tables, and like I literally built it, from the ground up. And I'm sure people were like, this guy is crazy. I don't know what he's building or what he's doing, but I had a vision, right? And that vision was so strong that like I knew that there was a moment in time where the vision was going to catch up to where people were, right?
Yeah.
And now we're in this moment where George Floyd, another, hero in my eyes, that has literally sparked another movement. Trayvon Martin sparked, all these people that sparked these movements to where now people are looking for a solution. And we're like, hey, we've been building that solution for the past 5 years, right? I know everyone thinks it's important now, but we've been supporting Black businesses. We've been giving Black businesses capital, from the beginning. And now our mission is like at the forefront of people's minds. And so um, having that vision, I think, was definitely a tribute to family, and seeing their perseverance and seeing them sticking to a vision. They moved from a whole nother state and took the vision with them and say, you know what, our vision may not work here in Kansas, but let's put it here and see what happens, right? And look at how they've blossomed, both professionally and individually, and how they've grown.
And that
So,
says a lot about, committing. Kim and I were just talking about this on the before we got on, because we're coming up to our 2-year anniversary and
I know, right?
100th episode, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm like, that was just a
That's
goal.
consistency, right?
Like that was a goal of ours from the beginning, of kind of like, okay, we're going to commit to this. At least, they'll talk about podcasts, about like, if you got to be ready to commit to 100.
you got to commit to it.
Like,
consistency.
Without nobody ever seeing it or hearing it, you don't know what's going on. Just putting that out there. And so I was like, we were sitting here looking at the calendar. I'm like, girl, we only like a couple weeks away. Like it's almost 100. I'm like, 2 years. That's crazy, But when you know what your purpose is, and you know what the vision that God gave you, you can stay consistent with that thing, and at the right time, it will do what it needs to do.
Yep.
And
somebody will see it. Somebody will notice it.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, you and I, we talked Impact, a few years ago, and then I've just watched it blossom, over the last 12 months, really, like just seeing whoa. So people just throwing money at you at this point. And that's way different from what it was when we was talking about it.
Love it. We was making them checks last. I don't know how we was doing that.
So talk about, what is Impact Ventures? What exactly have you been doing? And I know you have a new accelerator that's going to be starting this week or next week. So tell us a little bit like what exactly it is and who should be looking to join this accelerator.
Yeah. So I like to talk about the why first, and this is something that we all know, is that traditionally, minority and Black-owned businesses don't have access to high networks of individuals, because we don't come from money. So we don't have a rich Uncle Ned that can write us a check for 50 grand and say, hey, go start your dream. A lot of us don't have a savings account or even an asset that we own, like a home, that we can take out a home line. We can take out the equity in our home to start a business. And so because of that, we don't have the playing field is not level when it comes to how we can scale entrepreneurship and how we can build a business that really becomes something we can pass down from a legacy standpoint, or something that people can really get excited about. 97% of Black-owned businesses are sole proprietors, meaning they have one employee or less. And so the question is not that can we start businesses, but it's about growing, right? And so oftentimes I see my peers be in the space where they've started, but they don't have a resource to go to really know how to build it and grow it, because they don't know someone who's done it before. They don't have, they can't go to the country club or to the golf course and talk about how, like other cultures do, where, you can go in and they can tell you about how they do this and all, you should do it this way. So that mentorship is a key component too as well. So what we did is we basically said, okay, this social capital, this knowledge capital, and this financial capital, how can we bring those resources together in a training program that allows people to get access to those resources and in a way that is intentional and authentic. That's based on who we are as individuals. So we talk a lot about privilege and power and race. We talk about how we show up to each other as Black people. But oftentimes people ask me, what's the fundamental component between business? The first thing they say is supply and demand. And I said, before supply and demand, there has to be trust, right? Like before we can even talk about, how many apples you got, how many oranges I got, how many grapes, Kim got. Do we trust each other that we can even come to the table without our hands behind our back saying, you know, you know? So I think that is a component amongst the Black community that we have to adjust is this interpersonal relationship and conversation and dialogue with each other before we can say, hey, world, help us. Like, how can we help ourselves internally? So, so we have a training program. It's 10 weeks. We do it twice a year. So we're coming up on our third cohort. So far, we've helped 65 entrepreneurs go along to raise about 1.7. I think it's 1.7 now, $1 million in capital. They get access to a pool of about 90 mentors across the country that have different skill sets, different executives from CEOs to chief officers of big companies like TGI Fridays, Alchemy, some of the biggest corporations that have gone public. So having access to those people, it would take you forever to build those relationships, right?
Yeah.
And when it costs you a lot of money to to develop those relationships as well. And so we take them through a 12-week program that really allows them to become more self-aware about where they are in their business and what are the things they need to go forward. A lot of times, and you guys probably know, as being entrepreneurs in your own right, is you could easily get so zoomed into like the problems that you face every day. Like whatever's on fire when I wake up, that's what I put out,
Yep.
but we rarely ever get a time to zoom out on a 30,000, level foot up and look at all the components of the business and say, where am I at in each of these categories? And what do I need to get to the next level? And then also, if I want to look at capital, what do I need to do now to be prepared to acquire, whatever the capital that I need? Because every business does need capital in some way, whether it be customers, capital, or whether it be through external, financial capital of a loan or an investment. And so at the end of the program, they're able to pitch for a $50,000 investment. And this is something like a Shark Tank type thing, where you're pitching your business and you got folks listening to. But instead of pitching to investors, you pitch to the community, right? The people who are going to use your product, the people who are going to validate and tell you if it's whack or if it's not, right? And so they give you feedback. There's dialogue. It's very interactive. And it really gives them an opportunity to showcase what they've been building, for the past 10 weeks. And so we're excited to, when we first started the accelerator, what we realized is that, we having success with training entrepreneurs, but there's this saying that we always say is that entrepreneurs of color are over mentored and undercapitalized, right? Often we see there's so many mentorship programs being offered to our community, but no capital. Like write a check. Like
Sponsor us.
every time I ask you for something, it's, hey, here's a mentor for you. Or, but when it comes to other cultures, when you look at some white entrepreneurs, when they come and ask for money, it's like, hey, I got an idea on the back of this Chipotle napkin. Let's do it. Right. And let's fund it. And you have the opportunity to fail. And a lot of times Black and brown founders don't get the opportunity to fail. Not even like Black entrepreneurs fail. We don't get the opportunity to even test if we're going to fail or not. So what we decided to do is a while back, maybe around 2018, we started looking around the country of like, what type of flexible, creative, innovative capital is going to communities of color that's not extractive, that's friendly to them in terms of the terms on how to pay back, but it also helps them grow, internally and organically. And so we've launched this fund called the Inclusive Capital Fund. It's a $20 million initiative to invest over the next 10 years into women and Black and brown led companies. And so you can be a traditional small business, or you can be a high growth technology, small business. Doesn't matter if you're looking for either debt or equity capital. We provide more flexible types of capital that we really feel like is going to help founders of color grow without giving up a lot of ownership. A lot of times we take deals that, are not friendly. For example, someone taking $30,000 for 30% of their company, right? Because they don't have the knowledge to know that their company is way more worth what they're pricing it at because they don't have that knowledge or someone to even tell them. And so it really helps to have a partner in business. You can't run this. You can't be successful in entrepreneur in a vacuum. And so we really serve as that like partner for them. We have founders that are like, hey, I have a meeting with this investment firm next week. I need a strategy session so I can we help them prepare for those meetings. We give them insight on like, hey, this investor invests in the type of company that you're building. So it's good to have that outside partner that can really help you and look at your company objectively without the bias and tell you the truth, honestly, because, nobody's going to be as passionate about your thing than you. And so you really need somebody that's on the outside that can be honest with you and also encourage you as well through the process. So that's the community. I like to say it's not just an organization or a business. It's a community. It's an ecosystem that we're creating on both a local and a national level. And so this next phase is really about like, how do we get capital into the hands of Black and brown people to be deciders of their future? And so I'm excited I always thought as an athlete back in my former life that my son was going to grow up watching me be on the field. I got a lot of old teammates where, their sons was in the stands. I get to see my dad, he's on the field playing football. And so I think it's exciting for me to see my son grow up and see me in this business realm, because that's kind of what I grew up. My dad had he had a briefcase and I had a lunchbox, and the lunchbox was my briefcase. So I would have my little pen and paper and stuff in my lunchbox, and I would like steal his jewelry and like wear it to my school pictures. And he'd be like, "Where's my ring?" And then he'll see my school picture. I got this big fat ring on and a Rolex.
I love that, because that's what your son is going to do. He's going to be the same. These kids, they watch. And this year, since I've been at home with my boys, they stayed home with me all year. And the things that they have picked up on, like now they have a whole new view of what I do for work. Like they hear me on the calls. They're like, so what happened on that call? Like they want to know what the end result is, outcome? And they're learning who the people are, the players are, and all these things. And they're like, oh, okay. This is how you learn how to, and I'm like, I'm so on with what you're saying, just with all of us, but as parents, as a father, like having a child be able to look at you, and say, wow, my dad built something, from nothing, and was able to do this. Now, what am I going to take from this and build something, whatever that might be, whatever his journey,
whatever his journey. And that's why I named him the second and not Junior, because I wanted him to have his own story and his own journey. I didn't want him to be subject to, what I did. If he wants to be a writer, hey, we're going to pursue, writing. If he wants to be a painter or artist, whatever that he wants to do, he's going to be the best that he can do at that. But I think it's all about exposure. And going back to what I said about being in your 30s, when you're in your 30s, you're in this building phase where you've built enough relationships, you got some skin in the game, you cut your teeth a little bit. And so you can understand what your child is passionate about and then put them in the environments that are going to expose them to help nurture and grow that seed that's being planted. So a lot of times when you're younger, you're still trying to put yourself in environments to grow and nurture and so a lot of times the kids miss out because the parent is still trying to develop, themselves. So I love the fact that, we're both in a stage right now where we can take a step back and say, you know what, I've had my fun. I'm at a different phase of life. And this is about how do I expose them and put them in the best situations to be successful? Because I never met a Black venture capitalist until my adult years. Right. And so what inspired me to get into this industry was because I read about one. So I read a book called Why Do White Guys Have All the Fun? By Reginald F. Lewis. He was one of the first Black billionaires in the private equity industry. And like, even though I didn't have that direct exposure through an individual, you have to figure out what are those other resources. And books have been my greatest mentorship is through books.
Yes. Yep. Reading is fundamental.
And leaders are readers.
Yep. Exactly. So I commend you, as a Black woman and mother and in the space to really be intentional about, okay, if he's passionate, I know we were chatting earlier about golf and how your boys are taking golf lessons. And if that's what they're passionate about, put them in an environment where that gift is going to grow and be nurtured.
Yeah.
Don't suffocate it. So
And we
I
did
think
the same
that's
thing
awesome.
with like Kim's daughter. She's 21 now. She's killing it.
What? You got a 21-year-old?
Yes. Can you believe it? She looked 21 herself.
What?
Yeah, I started young. Unfortunately, I was nurturing and nurturing myself, but unfortunately, I was bringing her along the way.
But you got a second win. When you start early, you get that second win. When they leave, now
I be
you
so
still got
jealous.
a whole.
I be jealous, but see, I now that she my friend, look, I use it to my advantage because she got way more energy than me. So when we go on vacation with the kids and all that, Kim is the one jumping up in the pool and doing all the run around with the boys and stuff. But same thing with her daughter. She's now interning. Where's she at right now?
She's going to Salesforce.
She's at Salesforce.
No, well, she was at Salesforce. She was at Salesforce with me, and now she's at Microsoft as of tomorrow.
Yep.
That's awesome.
But she always, when she was in high school, she used to be, around us and asking us questions and saying, figuring out what she wanted to do based on what we will be talking about, and stuff. And she's like, I want to do consulting, or whatever. So she'll just learn different things and then getting exposed and us talking to her about negotiation and all these things. And so now she's able to actually walk in those rooms and have those conversations. She's on her meetings,
for
raising
the whole child. Like,
yes, the nurturing and nourishing. Like I knew what her gifts were or are, and I would intentionally put her in programs that will pull that out, like the leadership and the public speaking and the technology. I would just put her. I would sacrifice driving miles out of my way to put her in programs that will cultivate that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
and I know. Yes.
I was going to ask you. I said, tell us about what's next. Like, what's the next phase? What is your vision going forward for yourself as well as Impact?
Wow. This might not sound exciting.
Well, you've had a lot of exciting things happen.
But it's really exploring myself, I think, as an individual. And when I say that, I mean understanding what friendship looks like what true friendship looks like. I think when you get older, it's harder to make friends because people are set in their ways, people are stuck in their, and what's funny was because I've always had a lot of responsibility at a young age. And so sometimes when you do that, for example, when I moved to Dallas, I think I was 23 or something like that, 24. While my friends were going to day parties and they were, at the, the fraternity events, I'm talking to 45 and all my friends were 45 and up. Like, I was at Buttons at 24, Buttons when it was in Addison. Yes. Look, I look back now and I'm like, what was I doing?
You were being strategic. You were being intentional.
I was being intentional. I was sacrificing. Look, I was at Buttons with all the, with the seasoned folk, two-stepping. At 24, I look back now and me and Catherine laugh about that. I was like, what was I doing? Like,
I love old people. All my friends are old.
I'm an old soul as well.
Me too,
and so
Benjamin.
I feel like, so this next phase for me, like it's not about professional for me or business for me, because I feel like as I improve as an individual and as a husband and a father and a brother and a son, I feel like naturally that's going to impact my professional career, right? It's going to impact my ability to connect with my staff, to connect with stakeholders, to build relationships, because at the end of the day, that's what this is about. It's about relationships, right? Business moves at the speed of relationships, right? And depending on the strength of those relationships, business will flow, through that. And so this next phase for me is about like intentionally continuing to do that self-work, because I feel like where I'm at professionally, I feel like I haven't hit my, what do they call it? When you're in your,
not midlife,
like the best you, no, when you're in not midlife crisis, no,
your peak,
your peak, but you're like, I'm trying to think of the word. It's like when you're at your highest moment. I can't think of the word right now. But I feel like I haven't hit that moment yet in my
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
Even though I've done these things professional, I don't feel like my
It's
my
still the
mindset
beginning. It's still the
has
beginning.
caught up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, I feel like the more I can develop as a person, I think the more I'll do, professionally, because that's really going to be the make or the break between where I go, is how the ability I am to lead people and to connect with people. That's going to be my ability. That's going to be decided on how high I go. And for the lack of this that I enjoy about the process is the visibility part of that, is as you start becoming more public, and now you have to be fully transparent because people want you to show up as who you are. And if you
Yeah.
haven't done that, it's going to show, it's going to not be authentic. And so I think that's where I'm at right now, is continuing to do that self work, continuing to build relationships, with my family, because, family, there's a element of like that maturation phase, where when you become an adult, sometimes your parents and sometimes your family don't realize you've become a whole new person
Yes.
because you have certain experiences that they don't know about. They think they raised you. Oh yeah, I raised my son and blah blah blah. And it's like sometimes they don't have no idea what you've experienced as an adult and how that's changed you, and you have to get to know them all over again, right? And so for me, I think that's going to be the process that helps me be a better, husband and father, and just all around person. So
And I
I know
think
that's not exciting.
when you have kids, it gives you a new relationship with your parents
It
as
does.
well.
Yes,
It's
yes, I've
something
noticed
that,
that.
yeah.
I've noticed that for sure, because I'm one of the oldest in my family, but I'm the last to have kids, and so for the longest, I felt like they treated my younger brothers and sisters older than me because they had kids, But now I feel
Mhm.
like, okay, there's this shift happening where they're like, okay, you understand now because you have kids, which I do believe there is a level of like revelation that comes along with being a parent, because you realize you just can't do the same things you used to do. Like
Oh,
you
and
can't.
you
You have a.
realize more about your parents as you
Mm,
parent. So, like,
Yep.
my children are very similar. I mean, I see myself in both of my kids, but my youngest one, that's my mini me right there, right? So my mom be like, "You were terrible. You were so mean when you were little. That now you get to see how I was." So she just loves that I get back whatever she feel like I gave her. But I now see, like, I used to be like, I'm not doing my kids like that, or I'm not gonna do this. And I'm like, I was like, okay, I'm sorry, mom, for everything that I've ever done. But yeah, like, you have another
well,
level of respect for just the job that they had to do, the
yeah,
responsibility,
the
and all that.
responsibility. You don't get a day off. You don't get to wake up one day and just say, "No, I'm just not going to be a
Not
parent
gonna
today."
be
I'm just
here today.
Yeah.
And it gives you that
like you.
perspective that you said, Benjamin, that also parents did the best they could with what they had. So I
Mhm.
Yes.
extend grace, right?
Yes,
You
you
when
got
you
to
get
have
to that
that
that point of
grace.
healing too, right? In Revelation. So
Yeah. Well, okay. So tell us, all right, how can people support Impact Ventures? How can they support you? Where can they find y'all? All the socials and all the good things.
Yes, you can support us by donating to our mission. If you go to our website, www.impact-ventures.co, not .com, .co, you can go to the donate button. You can donate 5, 10, 25, 2,500, 25,000, whatever you feel led to do to invest in our mission, because it really is building strong communities. Like when I see, 83% of Black-owned businesses hire Black employees. So the more we support Black businesses and the more that Black businesses grow, the more we shrink that unemployment gap, right? The
Yes.
more we allow people from communities to get quality jobs. And as we know, if you give somebody a job, guess what can help a family,
Mhm.
right? And so it is this compounding impact that we have as an organization. But you can find us on all social media at Impact Ventures. Impact Venture Co. is our social media handle for Twitter, Instagram. You can find us there. We're most active on Instagram and LinkedIn for my professional
Of
folks
course. Right.
out there. We're really popping on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. It's such a
I
good,
love
like,
LinkedIn. We
it's
love
such a good, yes, it's easy to connect with people, but you can find us there. You can also participate in some of our upcoming events. And so Saturday, July 17th is we like to call it our Super Bowl. that we do twice a year. It's our startup showcase. And so it's a virtual event. However, I wish it was in person, but we're still on COVID protocols, but it's a 100% virtual event. And this will allow you to connect with individuals throughout the entrepreneurial community that share a passion for innovation, technology, all things business. And then also you'll get to witness the pitch competition. And so $50,000 is on the line. And then we also have an organization called JB Consulting, a sponsor that came on and is giving our Leap Track folks $5,000 grants. So those awardees will be announced there as well. We'll have some breakout sessions on some really, really good topics that we're talking about around entrepreneurship, capital, and corporate as well. So this is definitely an event that you want to attend. You can share the link. I'll give you the link if you want to share it out to folks on the showcase. And so we're excited. We got 2 Black-owned companies that are producing the event. One called the Event Nerd, the other one called Zoe Communications. And so we're excited for them to produce this digital event for us. So yeah, we circulating the dollars.
You're just recycling.
What was it? Okay, hold on. You said, what were those 2 companies called?
Zoe Communications. So they're doing all the marketing and branding for the event. And then the Event Nerd, Damani Daniels, is a super dope creative dude that is his team is doing the event production. So all of the digital virtual stuff. Yes.
I love it. And that's why I want to know. I'm like, good. Add that to the database so that when we're looking for stuff, we can support some other Black-owned businesses. So that's awesome. Okay, Benjamin, thank you so much for coming. We love chatting it up with you. Thank you. Congratulations on the new home,
the new baby.
Oh yes, that's baby, yes. Generational wealth.
The new fiance, about to be wifey. All the things. Impact Ventures, you're doing great things. We appreciate you. We always love to hear some positivity. Yes. Someone who is really doing the work personally and professionally. And even that personal work is impacting the Black community. Okay, so just keep sowing those seeds out there. Tell all your frat brothers.
Yes, we need to get them. Look.
Yes, exactly. Create a discipleship group.
Right. Just keep putting the word out. And we thank you for joining us today. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you. This has been great.